Thank you guys for doing that. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are now having talked to some of our small business resource partners. We are going to turn to our economic development, our committee bill, and the first draft of it. And we are going to walk through it with our wonderful legislative counsel, Rick Sagel. And you should have the draft in front of you. It's on, is it posted? Yes, it's posted, and it's also in front of you. And we've had an initial discussion on the task forces, but let's, we really, as I think you know, we are trying in this bill, I think it's fair to say we really are investing a lot of this bill in further investing in the resources we already have established in this state to support small business. And we also have some additional pieces, downtown tax credits, expanded trade offices, a whole thing, supporting our creative economy, outdoor rec. There are a lot of pieces in this bill, but I would say the backbone of it really is drawing attention to and further supporting our small business community. So, Rick.
Yes.
Let's waltz through this.
Sure. Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm sharing the document. I can take it off the screen if you don't want it to be.
What's helpful, team?
We have paper copies, but those at home.
Yeah, oh, right. That's everybody who's watching from afar.
Sure. Okay. And what I'll try to do is a lot of these requests are in the governor's recommended budget. And I try to clarify if it's higher than the governor's recommended budget. And you may need some assistance from the chair or from the person that suggested or requested the amount to see if it matches what the governor's recommended amount is.
And when we get to one of those, we'll discuss it because there is stuff that's in the governor's recommended, but then there may be appropriate additional adds. Yep. And as our chair of appropriations says, he says, bring it on, give me your wishes. Big vision. So he is encouraging us to ask for what we really hope and want. Not just what we do that. Because I have no idea. We don't know what the federal, we have so much is uncertain at the moment. I think we just have to go with what we know is needed and what we are choosing as a committee.
Okay, so the first section is actually in statute. Most of this can be session law. This one's in statute. This is your downtown tax credit. I know you took testimony over this program and how it's worked recently. So the governor's, I am understanding that the governor's recommendation is to increase the number of credits to 5 million. I could not find that number in the governor's recommended budget. I may have missed exactly where that was, but I think maybe why it was not in the budget because it's in statute.
Right.
The current statute limits to 3 million a year. And my understanding is the governor wants to increase that to 5 million per year. And this would just be a statutory change from 3 million to 5 million. You would not have to give 5 million in tax credit. It would allow the state board who manages these credits to go up to 5 million, not match, go up to 5 million.
And I think we can verify with Hazel that the ask is 5 million. It is.
Yes.
It is in the government.
It is in the governor's budget.
And maybe the language wasn't there because it's in statute, you can't appropriate it. So
Exactly.
the rest of the language is, I just corrected one thing here. It should be no more. That's just a grammar thing that we update as we see them. No other changes in that statute, just the 3 million to 5 million.
Which you kind of ask them out there.
Sorry about that.
They're dissipating.
They were anticipating.
Dissipating.
Okay.
All right. Section 2 begins the small business requests, and I kind of lumped as many as I could in this section. And they each have a kind of a subsection here, like expanding legal services. This is the Vermont Law and Graduate School. You heard from them this morning about their request. They are requesting $300,000 that would be from the general fund to the Department of Economic Development, would then support the Vermont Law and Graduate School's Small Business Law Center.
And in all fairness, we can't say what it would be from. The appropriations committee will determine where it's from. But and there's more Kleenex here, gentlemen. The appropriations committee will decide. I don't think it says from the general fund here. Right.
In this language it does. That could be changed.
And it'll be changed
Yeah.
depending on where I just want to say that the appropriations committee makes decisions on this. Yeah.
I'm just curious if that number is still the number that they were asking for this morning. There were a lot of numbers.
Yes, I believe so. That was my understanding of these things.
I was tracking it, so 90%
Yeah.
sure. And then in or not in the governor's right.
It's not. It's up for us for discussion.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So this is the new committee for me, and I'm come from transportation, where we're really just dealing with the T-bill. My question is, in this process, so say we send this out of committee, you mentioned appropriations, they ultimately just weigh all of these requests above the governor's recommendation, how fervently we advocate for it. Is that correct? How that usually goes?
Absolutely, and whether they have money. So we could fervently advocate and they will have no money.
Okay.
So our job is to decide what we want to recommend to the appropriations committee. But I will tell you, the appropriations committee has welcomed our advocacy and welcomed our wishes. They do not yet have a box in which we have to work. And that will happen after crossover. Once the House passes its budget to us, we'll get a better sense of what money is available. And so we'll hone that. But right now, our job is to really support what we think is important for business, for economic development.
And then quick follow-up, and thank you for being here. I think this is still relevant. We're having it from us. We've got a lot of balls in the air with different bills. It's unclear to me how much appetite we have, how much money we're going to advocate for. So I'm really looking for you, Chair Clarkson, to give us some guidance as to whether or not this is where to put our shoulder behind relative to all the other money asks we're going to make.
Absolutely. We're going to have asks, not so much in our labor bills. Those are different asks. But we will have asks in housing as well. Much of it is in the governor's recommend, and some of it is above the governor's recommend. But in economic development, I think it's fair to say, that a lot of this is not in the governor's recommend, and is for us to consider and weigh together.
Okay, thanks.
But it's there. The numbers are here. Based on the conversations we've had, the asks I understood during the course of the last month and a half.
So I think you heard what they want to use the money for. We list out 3 things that the money could be used for: individual, group, educational training, consultations, ongoing webinar series on legal basics for startups, and an attorney referral program. So that's what the money would be used for.
So each section is a different ask that we heard fleshed out this morning.
The Professionals of Color Network. This would be $350,000. The purpose, and again, something I didn't mention is these, and maybe Senator Clarkson did. These programs already exist. This is further. These are not new programs. These are further supporting programs that exist. And my understanding is that, based on the Small Business Wednesday testimony and some other testimony, this is what you think are the needs to help small business growth. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that we're, at least my hope is to add muscle to the resources that already exist. Because this is a huge percent of our business community are small businesses. And I think this committee can actually make a big difference in helping more of them.
So this money would be again sent to the Department of Economic Development for the purpose of continuing the support of the Vermont Professionals of Color Network. I believe she was here this morning, in its critical workforce and business development services. It provides the BIPOC business communities and to support the expansion of its business technical assistance services, which includes a few things there. So again, this is maybe the point of this is to instruct how the money can be spent. What it can be used for, and you have the option to have them come back and testify about how the money was spent.
And I think she did. I mean,
Yeah.
happily, we've had that this morning.
Yeah.
So this, what's nice about your walking through this now is that we heard what they wanted for this morning. So just on this money, team, this is 250. It's in the governor's budget of this, and 100 would be in the additional ask she made. So we don't do in statute, we don't do break it out. You do what the ask is. And so, just so you know, it's 250 is in the governor's recommended, and 100 it would be in the. Okay.
Okay, then we have subsection C, the business advising.
And
So
this is Linda Rossi and the Small Business Development Center.
this is the Vermont Small Business Development Center. So the appropriation is 688,889, and that is 300 above Senator Clarkson.
Correct.
My-
So
okay.
the base ask that it's in the budget at the moment is 388, and they've asked for an additional amount.
Yeah.
And you heard they've grown 7% in 10 years.
Yeah,
Randy, we're on page 3, on business advising. And what we're saying is that this is our opportunity to decide what we want to do additionally, if anything, from the governor's ask. Not all of them have governor's asks. So, and Andy has really said, give me your wish list. So we get an opportunity before crossover, to really say, what do we really feel needs further investment and what doesn't? So this is 388 in governor ask and 300 in additional ask. Just so we pencil that in, because okay.
this one I put in there that this was an increase because I had the number clearly
Right.
in the governor's ask. The funds the purpose is to continue the work in helping Vermonters start, acquire, and grow businesses. The fund shall also be used to increase business advising and educational workshops to meet increasing demands. And you see the reason for the increase of the reason for the ask of additional 300 would allow the center to serve an additional 200 Vermont entrepreneurs and business owners through no fee one-to-one advising to help them start businesses, add and retain jobs, increase sales, export products, and prepare their ownership succession plan to transfer ownership for the business to continue to operate in Vermont. That's the reason for the increase. The resource guide, I think Ellen Taylor went over this earlier, in 2026, 100,000 to the Department of Economic Development to support the creation of a definitive business resource guide directed toward small businesses. This would be an annual magazine style publication, as well as an interactive website. That would be its digital home and an AI component that complements the website by including events, grants, programs, and educational content. Something you may want to consider is a due date for this magazine to be completed by. That's not in the bill, but if you want to give them
Sorry, a due date for what?
for producing the magazine, producing the website, if you want to give them shall be live by a certain time. That's something that is not in there, but might be something to consider.
Yeah, I was setting an expectation. Yeah.
Some kind of experience. And then for the last of the small business section here, the micro business support, 581,000 to the Department of Economic Development for the purpose of supporting the Vermont VCAP, their micro business development program.
And I will remind us, there is an ask, and this is 87,000 more than the ask that's in the governor's budget. Any? Yeah,
So I just remember, I think it was on the floor yesterday, Senator Pershing, the chair of appropriations, said he really liked that the amendment, which did fail, came forward with not just an ask for more money, but a source. As we consider and contemplate asking for more money, is it traditional in this committee to also look for either savings elsewhere or other revenue sources?
not so much. No, but we certainly can, but not in this case.
Well, it's also difficult without doing the homework.
Right.
To do that, and that frankly is the time to do it.
Yeah.
know it's something that leaves off the table at us. It's, just sort of be reduced because we've seen something that's come to us in our normal course of business. And we don't think it's warranted. That would then be like very appropriate for us to say.
Yeah, but
And, yeah, maybe not my place to say it. I think the appropriations committee would be more likely to handle that. This is what you submit, and then the appropriations would look kind of overall picture of we're going to spend this here. Maybe we should adjust this here.
So one thing that's missing though, that is particularly important is what's the return on investment?
yeah, and
What's the return on it? Why are we doing this? And what are we going to get out of it? And why add to it?
well, and I
That's what's fundamental.
yeah, and I think there was a lot of that discussed and answered in part this morning. But I just wanted to pull up the request is 581 for micro business, which is which I'm not sure whether that full amount is in the governor's
Like I
budget.
said, this is 87,000.
It's an $87,000 increase, but I'm not sure. I think the 581, I don't know whether the 581 is in the budget or if so we just need to talk about
I'll
it.
double check that.
It's important to know how much we're over and then total.
Yeah, I've run into it. I got run into it. Okay,
Okay, section 3, Vermont Arts Council and the Film and Creative Media Industry Initiative. So there is an appropriation request of $1.71 million or $1,071,000, which is an increase of $68,737. And the reason for this increase is because the federal estimated grant is going to be an increase of $68,737. And if the state does not match the federal increase, then they don't get the federal increase. Hope that makes sense. I put that in language below that. The increase would match the estimated federal contribution. And then
yes, the deal per state, but in all 50 states is they have to match
Right.
dollar for dollar.
Yeah, just, I want to make sure that I understand though, is that the $1,071,000 less the 68,000 is money that is anticipated right now. It's already been being asked for.
No, it includes the
Yeah,
68,000.
but
That's part of their ask. Is it? I just wanted you to see what the increase was, but they're asking at the moment.
they're asking that $1,071,000,
Right.
and that is in the governor's budget. Is that correct?
the governor's budget is that minus 68. So that 1,071,000
Is what's in the governor's budget.
subtract 68,737. That is the governor's budget.
So the governor did not ask for this annual increase.
I don't believe so.
No, but the Arts Council will go before. It traditionally works at we advocate for it. The Arts Council actually advocates for themselves, just like the Humanities Council does in
Mhm.
front of the Appropriations Committee. And with all those quasi-state federal agencies in our state, they have this requirement of dollar for dollar. So they will, I have never seen our Appropriations Committee not match what the feds are, what the anticipated ask.
That's a more fundamental question, which I'm sure that the approach committee is asking with the chaos that exists in Washington right now. All of the stuff in which we're saying this is federal money coming in, frankly, is
It's all a question mark, but we can,
is in doubt. And of course, the thing that I wonder is the contingency planning that needs to be done to deal with it. And it's in such chaos that you can't even point a rifle at it through the contingency plan at this point, I'm afraid.
but we are working on a contingency plan, and the
Yeah.
public should know that. We're
We
working
should.
through the three ways: the treasurer's office, the administration, and our own lead council and JFO. So we are everyone is looking at programs that are more vulnerable,
Yeah.
maybe more vulnerable. And we have not, I've stayed in close touch with Susan on this,
Mhm.
and it is not, the vulnerability has not yet been shown on this. So
Okay.
fingers crossed. We'll see. It's all.
Okay, so there's a separate ask from the Vermont Arts Council. This is page 5, subsection B. This is the building of a database in 2026, appropriating $120,000 for the purpose of supporting the Vermont Film and Creative Media Industry Initiative, which would build the basic industry structure needed to grow Vermont's film and creative media sector. And you see there in subdivisions 1 and 2, what exactly the funds will be used for. Building and maintaining this online database of film and creative media assets and opportunities, and supporting a part-time staff position at the Arts Council to manage that database project and to serve as a point of contact for film industry professionals.
And this was one of their major asks too, when you did your,
It was one of the major asks, and again, I'm frankly not sure that it's enough to do what needs to be done is to have a leader for this particular function. And what we saw when we talked with how other states dealt with this, it was the leadership issue that was important. Creating the database, without a framework as to who's going to use it, how's it going to be supported, how's it going to be promoted, how's it going to work with. It's the people who are doing it and the leadership who are doing it.
I don't disagree. I think this would be a good start, and maybe
It would be a good
it
start.
might, and it might all evolve together, because I think that once I'm hopeful that it will. Thomas,
I'm always concerned, which I interpret this fiscal year 26 as one-time monies for a staff position. That is always concerning, because this is one-time funding to possibly go for half a staff position. Correct. That's always a concern. Because that there's the position left to cut, or it'll get a bunch of.
well, I am not sure. That's a question to ask Susan, which we can email her now. Because it is building it, and then maintenance of it, I think, is anticipated to be continued through to the partnership organizations that are doing it. To go to Randy's question, there is definitely a need for leadership in this arena, and without the film commission, we don't have it. And I think long term, that's what the film community with the Arts Council bringing it together to create this. I think that question will be asked.
And ROI again is going to be one of the key elements here.
Yeah,
Okay, shall we continue?
any other question? Go for it.
All right, section 4 is the outdoor recreation business appropriation. So this is 250,000 from, again, general fund, maybe not, but to the Department of Forests, Parks and Recreation to support the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance's Climate and Circularity, is that right? Outdoor Business Program. And you can go on and see what their reasons are. But
to remind people, Kelly was in with this specific ask, and we can her presentations on the website.
most importantly, the 1, 2, 3 at the bottom there, the funds appropriated shall be used for providing technical assistance to outdoor businesses, managing small group workshops and one-on-one consultations, and coordinating industry events that will assist businesses on financial planning and appropriate adaptations. This was not in the governor's ask, I don't believe.
I don't think it'll be.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. But I can ask her, I can find out if there is anything in the governor's budget for this, but I think this is our request. This will be mostly our request.
Okay, section 5, the International Trade Office. So this is 350,000 to the Department of Economic Development to support the International Trade Division, which is within the Department of Economic Development, to do 4 things: hire international recruitment consultants to focus more on international markets, develop and deploy advanced site location data and mapping tools to assist potential investors, expand Vermont's presence at national and international trade shows, and sponsor events and initiatives that align with Vermont's economic development goals.
And yes,
350.
and the governor's ask.
350.
I believe that matches the government.
Okay, good.
I will double check that.
No, it's that's the ask. No, that's the, yeah, this is correct. We've tried, given our time frame, we tried as much as possible to reflect what's currently there.
She said base, so your governor's asking to put it in the base, and this is one time, is that what you're? syndicated?
I believe that base funding increase request for 350.
Okay.
And that again is an appropriations committee decision.
Okay, section 6, this is back to statute. This is Ellen Taylor's proposal to amend the Vermont training program. And the purpose here, before I get to language, is I think the concern is that this training program does not specifically help small business owners who want to take advantage of the training program. Currently, if you operate a business, your employees can take advantage of it as long as you meet certain requirements. But small businesses with 20 or less employees in Vermont, which is most businesses in Vermont, they are not as eligible for these kinds of programs. And frequently it's because they wouldn't get reimbursed through the program because they're not considered an employee to be trained. So I think Ellen's proposal, then I would walk through it, is to kind of make it clear that these operators are also eligible to be in the training program.
Ellen walked through this with us.
Okay.
And really fleshed it out. Any
Okay.
other questions for Rick on this?
Sorry, do you want me to walk through the language or just skip down that?
I think the language reflects the
Okay.
ask, and you can see where it's underlined are the additions that you'd, if we agree with this, would be just adding the language that you see.
Yep, there's no request for more money in here.
Nope.
It's not changing the payout. It's just clarifying small business owners are eligible for this program. Okay, I'll skip down to page 12. We have two task force back to back. I think you heard about these earlier. So the first section 7 is the Accessing Capital Task Force. And again, open to debate on who serves on the task force and the powers and duties of the task force. You can read what I've included just as suggestions, but I'm happy to entertain discussion about.
Yeah, and I think these are two areas for us, both task forces are areas for us to help shape and form.
But the one piece that's missing in the first task force is outside capital, storage
Right.
outside capital,
Right.
opposed to our funds. And I'm going to talk to a couple of organizations, but I think there needs to be an add to that.
Oh, absolutely. We need to have someone representing the capital providers. So I think that is definitely excuse me, Gesundheit, a key addition. But we have the banker, the commercial bank lender, and I think we definitely need a capital provider.
As someone on the task force.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think just for all of us have served on task forces, they tend to be more effective if they're smaller and you really make use of bringing in experts. You bring in witnesses to do the work with you. Yeah, right. Then we have to pay them as a visiting, a traveling capital investor instead of a traveling nurse.
Okay, and then we have the powers and duties, and you kind of see.
So let's look at those,
Yeah.
because that is really in addition to who's on the task force, we need to flesh out what we're interested in and why. And I think that is still obviously information, and I would love your input on it. And you don't have to give it now, but it's the first time we're saying it. So I would, any additional, and anyone out there, I know Austin is here and he have some thoughts. So, I think what's important here is for us to understand what the state's role could be in convening, and enabling access to capital. And it's just, I think this has always been a bit of it's not clear Thomas.
I don't know, but it looks good to me, and I really invite anybody out in YouTube land
Yeah.
to send any suggestions, because people know these issues better than I know how this might be best focused.
Exactly. And
Needs to be broader than what's here.
yeah, and Austin Davis, I welcome input from you too, because I know you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, for the record, Austin Davis, Director of Government Affairs, Lake Champlain Chamber, would highly suggest naming the director of our program, Launch VT, the Business Accelerator. It's a great program that's not just focused on, startups. It's about scalable entities that can bring stable employment as well as stable tax revenue to the state. And I think you should also potentially expand the scope to include other mechanisms that come into the stack for these folks who are trying to scale that might involve for tax credits and other things that can come into the capital stack.
Which is what we are able to provide some,
That's right. So, it'd certainly be great to have private sector folks around a table talking about access to capital, but also talking about how the state can leverage that capital. We've heard a lot from our startup founders about, Maine's tax credit environment and how we're seeing more VC flee kind of to greener pastures for those reasons. So that could be a potential addition to the task force scope. And I think my colleague, Lauren Bass from Onview team would be a great fit for it.
if you two would be willing to send additional language to Rick, that would be helpful for us. Okay. Given our time frame. ASAP. Ladies.
On the timeframe, are you queuing up votes for the week we come back from town meeting day?
We are, just to remind ourselves, we are trying to get our bills out by the 14th of March. The big ask, and we can chat about how we're going to accomplish that, but that's our task. That's our challenge, rather.
Okay,
Thank you, Austin.
I had the ACCD as the kind of organizational entity behind this task force, seemed to be the most relevant agency. The report date, I'm not clear on how soon you want this to be done. I had it September of next year, September 1. That may not be enough time. For me.
That may not. I think that may be like overly ambitious. And we would need input from ACCD as to whether they're willing to host this and convene it. They seem to be the natural partner to convene it. But I would think November 1st would be a more realistic time. So let's tentatively just change that to November 1st.
Sure.
Is that okay, committee?
Well, if you want something that's going to be actionable in the next session, if you do November 1, then presumably we're going to have a meeting of this to assess what the task force has done somehow. And if you want something that's going to be done next year, the bill that we want done ought to be in January.
That's why November 1st is our deadline, because then
I just want to make sure there's enough time to act on it. If we're comfortable with that, I'm fine with it.
I think the only issue you may run into is the task force and the report to the committee, but you all aren't meeting until January.
That's going to be one of my
Right, but-
questions.
it's actually a question for you about legislative councils.
If you as chair send me, like, we received this report on November 1st, Rick, take a look at this. Can you develop a draft request or some kind of bill? Yeah, that would work.
So
If I'm not at the beach, if I'm at the beach, then
that beach in Northfield, that's
yes,
beautiful.
beautiful beach, Dog River, it's beautiful.
So is November 1st, November 15th? What? I think it's as soon.
I wouldn't patch it. The deadlines for the second year by name are a little bit tighter than the first.
I would just like to remind us, they're first week of December. So I think November 1st is realistic.
Okay.
If they need to ask for another little bit of time, there we are. And also they can have an interim report.
And that's something we could put in the course. I'll put the note here. You want to require that.
And because you never know, they may find that they need to do more work, but that they have an interim report for us to act on that may have some actionable items.
Okay, the meetings, the Secretary of Commerce and Community Development would call the first meeting or designate would call that first meeting. This is all pretty standard language. They select a chair. They would seek to assess and they change this. I always do it a month after the report in case there needs to be some cleanup. If there's some kind of question as to this for
So that would change to December 1st?
yes. If you're okay with that.
Yep.
And I do have the standard per diem language for legislative members and other members who are not otherwise compensated in their jobs.
Right. So. Okay. We will have a conversation with ACCD to see if they're interested and willing to do this. If not, there are legislative members so that we could conceivably have our staff manage it. But I think that the ACCD is a natural convener and we're such good hosts. That to me is the ideal, but let's see where we are.
Okay, then the last section for effective date is the second task force, the major conference center and venue. I wasn't sure if these are the same thing. I thought, is it one development project, Senator Clarkson? I wasn't sure.
I think this is the discussion, which is we know we have a need for both of these things. And whether they're in the same spot, who knows? I think that's part of the conversation.
So I'd be happy to have it down in Rutland. I do think Burlington makes a lot of sense. And not that I'm advocating for my neck of the woods, but just my years in city council and thinking about the global stage and conferences I go to. I remember sitting with Tom Torty, Tom, but
Yeah.
he would always say, if you're going to do a conference center in Vermont, it needs to be in Burlington, it needs to be downtown. You've been to those conferences like downtown New Orleans, downtown, because people just don't want to go far out, take taxis everywhere to see that landmark city. They want to be able to walk out on Church Street. So I think it makes a lot of sense for up there. Be it a venue, I'm not particular. I don't think that has to be downtown Burlington. I'll drive to Rutland to go see Noah Khan. So I don't know how that fits into this, but I just think a convention center, as I've contemplated it. I know there's been talk about the waterfront. There's been talk about the Memorial Auditorium welcome block. There's other areas in Burlington that it could fit. I don't know how that fits into this. We don't need to geographically target it, but I do see that as two big conversations about facilities that Vermont desperately needs.
So.
So if I could just add, so this conversation actually came up in a chamber meeting with our delegation this morning. Obviously, that's a Rutland specific perspective, but all I want to say is that I would recommend striking the word major and just let this be a free flow conversation about location and intent. Major kind of leads you to a preconceived conclusion, which is Burlington. I just think we need to have that conversation. May very well end up in Burlington. It could be a natural site, but major seems to be kind of leading it towards a conclusion.
Right. So I think that one of the challenges is we know these conversations are happening. I think it's for us to move forward on this. It would really be helpful to bring those conversations together in one place and to show that the state be as that representing that is interested in moving this conversation forward and bringing the right partners to the table to have that conversation. You're absolutely right. Major is a little subjective. So let's get rid of the word major. We hadn't had time to get, I know Megan Sullivan wants to weigh on this. I know the lodging community is very interested in this. And I know all our economic development partners are interested in it. So I think what we need in the next little bit is to further flesh this out. And hopefully we can have that by the end of this week. So once we chat with a few other key people, we can have language that will further flesh this out maybe by Friday.
So I'd welcome,
Yeah, Mr. Thomas, anybody? Yeah,
I'd welcome those out in YouTube land to send in some ideas about the charge. I'd also just say, I'd love the Hello Burlington people to sit down with what I'd love to see Hello
Yeah.
Burlington people. Who are working economic development. So Hello Burlington's done phenomenal work, and I'd love to just see that extend to Hello Vermont. So they've done great work.
I think Austin might like to add something here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would think the Hello Burlington team has been in ongoing conversations with regional partners about a convention center for some time. That team has indicated to me that infrastructure and capital, as well as potential operations and management agreements, would be the most helpful charge and scope for for a potential report. That could actually have a nice that scope could be geographically agnostic and just kind of talk about the general SWOT analysis for communities. What are the attributes that make for a successful convention center in different parts of the country? But then what does the state need to come to the table with in terms of capital to actually make this thing happen? And then the infrastructure around that. These things require a significant amount of infrastructure. Senator Shipman mentioned the airport. That's a significant piece of infrastructure when contemplating a convention center, but also transportation to and from that airport, hotel, capacity in and around that convention center, as well as restaurants and other things of that nature. And then the operation and management, our team has been in communication with the Champlain Valley Expo, for example, and the airport team to talk about how would these, agreements be undertaken in order to make this a venue that is being utilized by multi members of the community for different types of things, as you mentioned here. We might want our insurance and bakers to meet there one day, have Noah Khan there the next, have a craft show the following. That'd be a helpful scope for that.
Yeah, it would be interesting. So all this conversation also leads me to ask, should we use the word convention instead of conference center?
Convention, conference, I think could be interchangeable. But I think convention is probably
Okay, so then let's just use convention instead of conference. Because I think that there are many hotels in Burlington that would arguably have a conference center.
I think another thing to add to the scope, if I may, would be, a analysis of what the state currently has to offer, to your point, as well as what would be
What state has to?
what our state currently has to offer in terms of, say, meeting space convention center. If there is, but once you get to a certain capacity, we start to become very scarce. And when we talk to Hello Burlington, as you know, is doing conference leads on a regular basis. They bring in millions of dollars in conference revenues, and we do this on a 4-year rolling basis. But we try to get some of the larger tickets, and that would have substantial impact on our economy. Because I think one important thing to talk about in the context of conventions is that's how we're smoothing our curves and our rooms and meals tax. In the shoulder seasons, it's very hard to get tourists to visit here. But if we can get people who are traveling on their employers per diem to come here and be captive and have to come to this convention or this conference, that is really helpful to us. But some of those larger tickets that could fill our room nights, create that spillover effect, they can't come to us with the size of venue we have to offer. So understanding what size venue is feasible and what that would mean in terms of economic impact, and where we should be targeting for size of our venue, such that we can actually get the conferences we want.
I agree. That's exactly the conversation. Somebody suggested, maybe it was you, I can't remember, but in the break, people said, well, make sure you're including captive insurance here because they desperately want this.
Right.
Yeah. So we hear in Ways and Means and Finance all the time, we don't have a place that's big enough for us to, and we have to, evidently they have to host it every couple of years. And so, and they have to bring everybody together.
Well, it's important if we're going to continue to maintain first place to be able to do that effectively.
Yes.
Question about it.
They might actually also support it.
Yeah, I know we're talking about this particular thing, but as I go through this, and I look at the issue of section 7, looking for access to capital. I look for this section in terms of this. I'm just concerned about the way we're going about doing this. We're going the traditional way that we do it in the legislature is we select a bunch of people from various disciplines and we create a task force and have the task force meet at some time after we do it. And it'll be a year and a half before we have a report, and that's before we do anything. Then once we have the report, then we'll theoretically start doing something about it and build a consent and so on. So anything that we do along these lines, and that notion of access to capital, which is so fundamental, no business would operate the way we're doing. This will be obsolete by the time it's done.
I don't agree with you.
I
And I
mean,
do,
I think it will certainly about.
I don't think it'll be obsolete.
It's not obsolete. It will be old and much less effective on things that we ought to be doing much sooner. And I'm saying, you know, is this traditional method that we use to do this fast enough? What we really need to do.
that isn't, I think that's a fair question, Thomas.
So I think that's what you get with a democracy. I mean, this is how things move slowly in government. And I will also say a walk of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And so I get the criticisms of task reports and studies, but I do see that that's where good policy comes from, where you unify, answer questions so that it gets a clear path. So I don't see a better path without maybe going to monarchy instead of the king. Just
Well, I think there's perhaps for example, if you have somebody in charge of who collects the information from all these various people so that we don't have to wait, 2 weeks between committee meetings where people have forgotten what they did in the last committee meeting to go back over again. That there may be a better way to get the information we need and get it accurate. And I'm just saying, seems to me a very inefficient way of doing something that guarantees it will take forever to do it.
Well, I think that's unfair. I think we do have to begin, as Thomas says, once, you have to put at least a step forward. We're at least stepping forward on a major issue that is incredibly important to small business in the state. I agree. And we as a committee, I would love to host this and spend a month on bringing all those access to capital people in. We're talking about the task force on access to capital. I'd love to do that. We don't have that time. I mean, you're absolutely right. I would love to be the convener of that conversation. I'd love to have that here, but
Well,
we don't have that time out of 3.5 hours a day.
But could the convener of the conversation to gather the information that can be concentrated and provide to us as the decider or the person who facilitates this be done by an individual, a group of individuals in the Department of Government?
Well, that's what
Would
ACCD is.
that be worth asking ACCD, how would you do this? As opposed to the way we're proposing it to be done.
We're having that conversation and we'll have Joan come in and testify to that effect. I think.
Now, I know there'll be a
that-
staffing issue, obviously, that we'll have to deal with. That staffing issue may have a cost,
Right.
but not doing something for a year and a half where you start talking about what you're gonna do as a cost.
Okay, so in all fairness, we're pulling this together this summer and asking for something in November for us to act in January, which is
Well,
the
that's
next time we meet.
Is
So-
that what we said?
Yeah.
I thought we said 26.
the previous one.
Yeah.
The capital is 26. I think the convention center you're talking about aggressive time. No.
No, the capital should be 26 is next year.
Well,
I mean, next year,
That year is a year and a half from now before they produce a report.
it's less than a year from now. It is January,
We're saying
November
that
of 25.
November of 26, they're gonna
Okay,
produce
it
a
should be
report.
November of 25. It's this November.
That's my mistake.
That's just a mistake.
That's what I'm just reading. That's what I'm saying.
Thanks for catching.
First draft.
All right, first draft, it's November of 25. So I'm thinking, really? That's not that.
Because
long.
I'm thinking, the fiscal year 26 throws me off. I'm
Yeah,
thinking about that
it's
stuff,
okay.
like, what year
So,
are we in? Yeah.
I
Well,
actually
the 26 obviously jumped out at me.
Right,
needless to
right.
say.
thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
Because for me, I think, wow, this was actually pretty fast. We're going to actually get a group that's going to meet together and actually get something to us so that we can hopefully act on it in January. That's our hope. So thank you for catching 26. Good point. That is a lot, right? And I think with the convention center and performance venue, that is this is helping sort of focus discussions that been ongoing for a long time. It may take us much longer than just a but I think if we don't begin it, it won't happen. So let's pull everybody together and at least get that conversation going. And we welcome additional language on this piece, which we're hoping to get from Megan and from a couple other participants. Thank you, Jeremy, for being here. It's so great.
So, Madam Chair, you would like an update on Friday? Update the language on Friday, is that what I heard?
I think that would be great. And so you were kindly going to reach out to Megan.
Yes.
And we are going to reach out to some of our capital partners to see who would be appropriate to add. Hazel, I know that Joan has some thoughts on this, and I know I'm talking to Joan soon. So other thoughts on this.
Hi.
So I would love to, I mean, we have 45 minutes still, with Rick. I would love to have us sign off on the things we think we're okay on. And there's obviously lots of room for discussion in terms of the money. And so, I think what would be helpful, I mean, we can digest it, we get another week on it, but I really would love us to, if we can, move some of it forward on stuff that we may or may not be in agreement on. So, I think, so what I said earlier on is that Andy has said, bring us the wish list, bring what you want. We're not yet constrained by box. Bring the wish list, and so we have done that. And this represents both governor's asks and our additional asks on some of this stuff, which I can show you as we walk through it. We had so maybe if we start, I thought a constructive way for me to move forward on this would be to look, sort of just start section 1. How do people feel about downtown tax credits? Because I think it's one of our most important programs that leverages 17-1. So I'm a big fan of it.
So I don't have any objections to any of the stuff we covered this today. I do think that might be more useful to go back through it after we hear from people in YouTube land. I sort of trust on those advocates that are watching these conversations to inform a lot of headlines on these things.
So the additional people I hear that we need to hear from is ACCD. We need to hear from John Young about how he feels about expanding the training program to the owners, which I think is a great idea. Sorry, yeah, John. And so we'll get John in, who runs that program, Joan and or Lindsay in to discuss about convening the access to capital. And Megan, we're going to chat with offline to flesh out the conference, the convention center. The convener of the convention center task force is us at the moment. It's the legislature, right?
That one's pretty open. I don't think I have a convener.
So we also might think about who
Secretary.
we could. Sorry,
I have ACCD as the first meeting, but that is just a placeholder.
okay.
Yeah.
But we do it. So I think that's one of the reasons we need to have ACCD on both those task forces. I think we've heard pretty much from all the small business apps and resources. So what we're doing in this is really building on the resources we already have and further supporting them.
Are you asking for a straw poll about which pieces people support or not?
Yeah, at this point, I think that's sort of what I'd love to. And Thomas, I think is saying he's sort of supportive of it all. And I think they did I didn't include 2 of their asks for immediately in this bill. You'll see that the creation of the small business community connector is not included in here. We can add it after crossover with whatever bill we get if we want. And the building out the CTE entrepreneurship program that we can discuss when we get to workforce development bill from the House.
Did Senator Harrison had a bill, SADA, growth incentive for employee-owned businesses? I mean, I don't know if you already took a look.
We haven't looked at that yet because it just arrived.
Right, I will look through everything. To see, because this is our most broad topic area, so, I mean, I wanna make sure we put things in it that really. Have teeth or meat or something.
Yep.
And that one, I just think employee-owned businesses are a great place to look for the kind of workforce and economic development that builds wealth.
I
So
agree.
I think that would be a good one to add into here.
We have not, and I'm just
We haven't
looking
had
at our
time
time
to
frame,
write this.
but I also
Yeah.
think we have time after crossover to add it to whatever economic development bill we get from the House. We
Mhm,
could take that work. I think it's a great bill
mhm,
and a great ask. We have
mhm.
this week and we have next week.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to be realistic about it.
I think as I glance at this, the only piece I'm not currently comfortable with is the event center. I've been on task forces for event centers. I've had this conversation and it's going, in my mind, it has to be a part of the TIF evolution conversation. It's taking the projects that are getting the infrastructure that we're developing and saying, the state is asking for you to, include this, and that gets past, frankly, neighbors who would probably oppose this otherwise. And there's just, I think having a public conversation about where an event center might go is, from my experience trying to do this work for a long time, is not gonna be a good use of anyone's time.
Well, I'm not married to any of this stuff, but I would say I see some value in as contemplated here in order to inform where a TIF might be considered if there's agreement from statewide stakeholders.
Then let's work on the TIF. Because I think it's gonna need money and infrastructure and transportation tools and not just a study. I think we should spend more time on the infrastructure piece.
I don't disagree. I also think that this would help amplify the need and articulate and illustrate TIF support. For possibly next year. We have in our housing bill infrastructure financing proposal that we're gonna be looking at on Friday.
Well, maybe,
And so I think the question
maybe
is,
I'm stuck on capacity and just like. We get one study, like we can't, I don't like putting work on a very overtaxed ecosystem that I don't think is so important to our work. When they're crying out for infrastructure and financial tools. So I'm very wary of studies and task forces. I don't care who's staffing them. I just want like maybe one in each bill at the most.
so I actually think they help advance our work often.
It's a philosophical difference that exists.
Yeah,
I think
no,
every
okay.
legislator decides where they are, and I'm just squeamish about one that I don't think has any legislative action for us at the end. It just doesn't seem like our place to be doing this. I don't even know if these are the right stakeholders.
Well, I'm really was responding to a need we heard, and particularly addressed by your district mate, who was very keen, and I've heard from the chamber and from the lodging community.
Well, my district mate and I know the very few places where this would work at the scale that it needs to work. And I don't need a task force to tell me that. I need a TIF.
I
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I think there's merit in continuing this conversation just to highlight how we need an event space, an indoor event space, as well as I think a convention center, and it's a good discussion to be had. So if that doesn't happen in the TIP conversation, I think we're missing an opportunity. But I'd love to hear from ACCD if they're going to be the conveners of this. If they don't have the capacity, then again, we can put this on the shelf. But I see merit.
We're going to have a new economic
you guys.
development person. I just think we have to be cognizant that we're understaffed this conversation is the kind of conversation that happens organically as a project develops, where we know there's capital and transportation and infrastructure. And the organic places those conversations are going to happen are in our evolution of the TIF program.
I don't disagree, but I also know and heard for many years about this conversation going on, and it hasn't resulted in much. And I think it's fair to,
Oh, forever.
yeah.
Well, then
So
what I would say is
So how do you call the question on it then? How do you say, let's pull together let's get,
I've had much more success saying, hey, blame me, the state, blame me, the legislature, that we are requesting a large event center be co-located with an investment we're making. We have this isn't a carrot or a stick, it's just it's a study.
Well, but I don't think we're gonna vote on this thing until after town meeting break, so I think
Yeah.
just let this sort of simmer and then maybe see some more language and come back to it.
Sure, let's talk
Just
about infrastructure.
yeah,
That's
we
right.
will be on the project. We
Okay,
have
great.
John Gray and Betco. Yeah, we are indeed. We're doing all that.
Is infrastructure, is that perking along in the house? Are they doing, what are they doing?
That is one of the reasons we're accelerating in this committee is, we want to make sure that it is included and in a bill and ready to go so that we can discuss it.
So is this a backup bill because we're not sure what's going to happen in the house?
I wouldn't say that. I'd say it is, it's what we will, send to the House. It's part of our housing bill. It will be part of our housing bill, is my hope.
Well, you know what they're doing and is it likely they're going to come up with something?
I know that they're
Flag on it.
they're working on trying to get the yes together in all the committees of jurisdiction. And I think one of the pluses is that we have only two committees of jurisdiction and they have 3 or 4. So getting them all to the same spot in time for crossover this year is a little more challenging than we have in the Senate. So our hope is to start that conversation, to get it moving in a relatively robust fashion over to the other side.
So Senator Robbins appointed one bill. I'm curious, Madam Chair, do you see S78 possibly fitting into this bill just as a vehicle? I haven't even looked at it. I just know I co-sponsored it. It's Senator Ruth articulated as something somewhat innocuous, but still important. Does that fit into economic development?
Well, it's here, so remind me what 78 is. I apologize.
Ireland Trade Commission, the creation of the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission.
So I drafted that bill. I can.
Well, would you like to speak to it? That's pretty straightforward.
So it was a bill that passed the House last session, which I also drafted. Didn't get to the Senate. It's very straightforward.
Did it not get to the Senate or did we just not act on it?
We didn't act on it.
GovOps.
Didn't act on it. Yeah, I went to GovOps and it didn't. There was other things going on. It creates a specific Vermont Ireland Trade Commission. There's no few things again. I've not looked at it since I drafted it, but a couple of unique things about it is it does not. There's no per diems or payments to the members of the commission. That was specifically requested by the sponsor. It just wants to facilitate trade with Ireland. I think Ireland is trying to do more of these state by state agreements. We would not be the first one. We would be one of several in this part of the country. So I think the idea is to facilitate student exchanges and financial exchanges and investments in the state.
Well, it certainly would add to the trade office that we're anticipating supporting in this, that Tim Tierney spoke to us about, and that's in the governor's recommend.
I will share my passion related to this bill, which I've talked to Representative Casey about. Ireland has a lot of programming under their Secretary of Community Wealth Building. They really look at their economic development as about how you enrich an entire community. And make everyone better off. And I've heard their secretary speak at a national conference and have really wanted that individual or somebody from that cabinet, I don't really know what you call it in Ireland, probably good to know. Would love to have them explain how that's going. I think it's a really intriguing direction, and Ireland has done very well attracting business, educating their workforce, and sort of creating a tide that lifts all boats.
Yep, we had them testify in the committee last year when they came to visit.
It wasn't very rich.
It wasn't very rich, but he
yeah.
was rich and colorful.
He was lovely. Yes.
That's what I remember.
Yeah.
And the presentation of the flag that you got or something got in this committee. Yeah, that's all I remember.
I don't know.
So I think if we were to discuss this, this would certainly complement the work we are already doing and have in this bill.
Do you want me to walk through the bill, right? I have some
That would
time.
be great. I would
Okay.
love to have.
And now
you
again,
on
this is off the cuff here. This is
That is okay.
why I get
We
paid
have
the
time.
big bucks. This is
We
we can
have
tell
time.
you something here. S78. Okay. Let's see.
We have the drafter.
And this is exactly what passed the House last year. Exact word for word. I may have changed the dates, but otherwise, let me.
It's a ton of sponsors.
Share this.
I guess I just decided not to sponsor.
There are blocks on there too.
I think I'm on there too.
You are.
Are you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there we are.
It sounded very innocuous in this 3 minutes pitch.
Okay. Apologies, sir. Okay. All right.
Could probably do very little harm. And
Yeah.
maybe.
So, again, a lot of this is based on my memory of the bill, but I do remember that this, I think I mentioned this would be the only trade commission. We don't have a specific country to state trade commission.
So would this be our first?
This would be the first. And I created a chapter thinking that there might be more. So this would be the first one, Vermont Ireland Trade Commission. It has 10 members on this commission. And by the way, the state treasurer, I recall, and this may change from year to year. I don't know what the current treasurer thinks about this, but he came into House GovOps and welcomed hosting this commission within his office. Again, I will confirm that that's still the case with the treasurer. So the 10 members, 3 appointed by the governor, 3 appointed by the speaker, 3 appointed by the Senate committee and committees, and then the state treasurer or designee. That would be the 10. The purposes I mentioned earlier, but here specifically, advance trade between the two entities, initiate joint action on policy issues, promote business and academic exchanges, encourage mutual economic support, mutual investment, and then the catch-all other issues as the commission determines. They are appointed for 4 years and serve until they either hit that 4-year or they are removed by the appointer. And you see there's some staggered terms here just to make sure that we don't all 10 leave at the same time. The governor's appointee serves 2-year terms first. The speaker appointee serves 3 years first. But then once that staggered terms are out of the way, they serve 4-year terms. If that makes sense. I butchered that pretty badly, but the language is there. The vacancy must be filled within 90 days of the vacancy. I think there are concerns about some vacancies just kind of lingering on other commissions. The commission selects a chair. The chair may create other subcommittees at the chair's discretion. The commission submits a report on December 1st of each year about their activities. They are authorized to raise funds either through direct solicitation or other fundraising events, along with donations, grants, bequests from individuals, corporations, foundations, to defray their administrative expenses and to carry out its purposes. The fund shall be deposited into a bank account that's allocated by the state treasurer's office. Any monies withdrawn shall not be used for any purpose other than the payment of expenses. That's also a specific request there. Interest earned shall remain in the bank account.
Is that standard practice for a trade commission to solicit their own funds outside the government?
It's about.
So this would be our first trade commission.
It's our
Um,
first trade commission.
yeah.
I don't think there's anything standard,
But
period.
that is a GovOps question. I think that's the reason there's a rub here, it's a trade commission, but this is a standard GovOps issue, and someone's on GovOps, having served on GovOps, they don't really like to have people compensated from outside sources. That's a bit of a slippery slope, even though there are certain commissions where I love to add to what people earn, because it's so hard for folks who are lay people to serve on these commissions without some other money. But then you'd get into a huge question about who's funding their participation.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I think that's right. And this went through the House Appropriations Committee last year. They looked at this language very carefully and they were okay with it.
And then the other thing that kind of stands out to me is that the treasurer's in here, but and I apologize as a new guy, that Joan staff is not here. The economic development.
Yeah, the
arm
place
of
where our
county.
trade commissions are housed is not. I think that's a big issue, and we're having ACCD on other parts of the bill, so we would absolutely like.
So if I may, Madam Chair, because I was here.
Yeah.
I heard the conversations. They were originally the entity over this, and I think they said they didn't have the time or resources to manage this. So the state treasurer took over. And again, something to ask them is, do they still not have the resources to manage this commission?
Says, kind of speaks volumes.
Well-
Development is not.
It's concerning, particularly because we have a full-time person there, Tim Tierney, who's our trade. What's Tim's title? Trade, he's the
Director of International Business Recruitment and Trade.
and trade. So I mean, this is his bailiwick.
Okay.
I'd say so.
And you have section 2, just the initial appointment deadline is October 1st of this year. And we put in a repeal, a prospective repeal. That's kind of the standard now, is to give the legislature, you all, a chance to review these programs in this case, it's 5 years, June 30th, 2030. You can change that. You can remove it, but generally speaking, that's what appropriations like the city, even though this is not going to cost state money, because there's no per diem, there's no expenses here. It don't have to
Time,
be.
it's just time.
It would
It's
be
people's time to convene and weigh and.
So something to consider if you want to keep this, if you want to change the date as well.
Well, sunsets help us focus on it again in 5 years and see what it's doing. To go to Randy's point, return on investment and what are we getting for this? What are we getting for this effort? Sunsetting it is always,
The Senate members of the commission fire will always at the end from donated money, it's not as successful as we hope.
right.
I'm very uncomfortable with this donated money.
yeah, it's just,
It's just, I wonder, did anybody look at whether other states have done anything like that in terms of how a relationship with the foreign government is funded by the state?
So I can get back to you. I do know that, like I said before, these specific to Ireland, these commissions are popping up in various states. And I don't know how other states have handled the donation.
Ireland used to do it by you Guinness. A lot of when you take this with
No,
that point.
I think that again, the reason for this language is to ensure that the state does not incur expenses and that their expenses are defrayed by gifts, which that's a policy choice, right? That you all can discuss. But I believe that was the intent.
Well, in terms of the relationship we have with other foreign governments, for Canada, for example, we provide it, we put a trade office there and we have an employee who works there to function as trade, but we don't receive any.
we don't have a commission with
solicitation. We don't have
Canada. I know it's true. Our biggest trade partner, we do not have a trade commission.
But we do have
it.
representation.
We have investment. In our consultancy and the consultant who we hired and work right there.
I'd just be very interested if this kind of model is being used by other states and whether there's any commonality.
Rick, can you do that or should we?
I will certainly, for my own reasons, look up,
Yeah.
how this language is, used in other similar trade commissions.
And Hazel, I think it would be great to Tim, obviously, and ACCD weigh in on this, that we would, if we want to include it in our next draft, we could, or we could have them come and weigh in as soon as possible. What's people's interest in at the moment? It's, to me, given that we have a sunset and a full review, I think I would think it would be complementary to and additive in very modest measure to the work, to the trade consultancy that's being asked for here for Asia and Europe.
That we allow the donation in this.
I think if we're putting it in our next draft, I think that that's a big question. I think that is the
maybe-
biggest sticking
Maybe a
question.
draft to look at, but I think in terms of action on it, I would not be comfortable
Okay,
voting on this thing with that in there without having done the research as to.
so let's keep it separate. It's its own bill. We have it
Well,
here.
I thought what you were suggesting is that we put it in the next version of the bill, but take that part out.
I'm not so comfortable with that part here. And it's a decision that we should make. But yes, that was sort of what I was suggesting, is that we include the part in our draft and then have.
But take out the solicitation.
Take out the solicitation at the moment and have ACCD and Tim Tierney weigh in on this.
Right, I mean,
And Rick with other
I
states.
imagine you can borrow the language from the Asia trade language that we're reviewing too, to.
Is the governor's?
Yes,
Executive order.
there's no raising additional money in the governor's proposal.
So one way, if you remove this section, how would you handle the, expenses that the commission incurs, the payment of those, would you just do how would you handle that aspect of the commission?
Maybe look at how that other one is structured and start there, and then we can go from there. But it sounds, I agree that it would be uncomfortable to put it in the bill as though it's ready for prime time with this in it. We are all very careful about junkets and activities that are sponsored by foreign companies and government.
Steve to us.
Absolutely. And quite honestly, this is our first one. And I would be interested, Rick, as you do your work with NCSL or with whoever has the other states that have set this up, what did they do about that? Who finances that?
Sure.
And that's a question I think also for ACCD, which is what would be the anticipated cost to this and who bears it? I mean, was the treasurer saying he was willing to bear the cost of convening this group?
I think he by saying his office would house the commission, yes, I believe he was okay with that.
I'm not so sure.
But again,
I don't think that's a fair question to Avalanche County.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's
No, I think we need to ask the treasurer.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you,
Okay. Don't
I'm
feel
asking you to
like-
find out from the other states about how they handle who raises the money to run the ongoing cost of the commission.
Sure.
But I think we have to, I don't even know what kind of money we're talking about.
Didn't we run into issues of people paying for legislative travel and so on and so forth? Previously,
How does the Taiwan thing do it?
85.
we have like a friendship resolution, but not.
With Taiwan, we just have, yeah.
Yeah. But
So,
you are very
the
aligned.
The pro tem has made money available to each senator for travel.
Right. Understand.
But that's all I know about.
We know about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm interested, but I need to take a bill off the wall.
So why don't we answer all those questions
By
before we
Friday.
include it? Although I would be happy, I mean, if people, let's answer the questions first, and then it's easy enough to
Fine.
pop it. That sound good?
Yeah.
Can we spend our last 15 minutes on the game plan for crossover?
Yes.
You need me here?
What?
You need me here?
We always need. But
I'm just, yeah, making sure.
Can I ask, is it Seagal or Segal?
Sagel like bagel. That's
Bagel like
that's the best
bagel,
way I can,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Because Rick Segal, isn't that the guy who does the wait, don't go?
Peter Sagel.
Peter,
Peter,
I was
yeah.
like, am I just making things up right now?
Is he your
Okay.
brother?
He's not my
Spelled
brother.
differently.
He spells it differently too, yeah.
He's,
I took a sonic tangent and I apologize. I just wanted to make sure I pronounced it.
so we lost ground and I haven't yet figured out, and I'd love a sense from, I think we'll see you again at 12 for
Okay.
agenda plan.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
So our game plan is to, I mean, my hope, I'll just start with our hope.
I think it's game time, you know.
Of course, it's game time.
Yeah.
It's been game time for what?
Okay, so
We've been acting. I mean, we're meeting, we're acting. So the hope is to get the 3 committee bills that we have discussed out of committee,
so that's
and the labor bills that we are going to be talking about tomorrow.
econ and workforce,
So econ,
housing.
no workforce till after crossover.
Okay.
Housing, economic development, and then the other bills that we have, we've incorporated as 6 into the technical corrections bill of the Department of Labor. That we're going to be looking at tomorrow. And then the 3 labor bills we're looking at with witnesses tomorrow.
So infrastructure is going into housing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And brownfields. So that here, I may not have this, but
People are obviously asking about a committee bill language they've seen that has a lot of placeholders in it.
yeah, well, that's what we're flushing out.
Okay.
So we and a lot has been flushed out since that went up yesterday. So we're going to walk through the infrastructure financing piece on Friday morning, and then we're going to walk through the bill. I would love to, if we can, reclaim the 2 hours on housing that we lost yesterday. And so that is a question to all of you as we look at our calendars. And I know it seems silly to ask for just 2 hours, but every hour counts, given that we only have the rest of this week and the following week. So
Can you say that again? So we're just spending all Friday on housing.
yeah, but remember, all writing to the public is 3.5 hours. Not even given that we're done at 11:30.
What's tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Thursday, is labor. And you have a lot of witnesses coming.
Okay.
So the question I have is maybe after the floor on Friday, do you have a notion, Madam Majority Leader, what Friday's floor time looks like at 11:30?
There might be others who know more than I do, just because
Are we gonna have another bill possibly being brought up out of a committee? I mean, is there, do we know of any other?
I don't think anybody wants to throw a curveball on Friday before town meeting, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'm saying there isn't.
Right, but yeah, to my knowledge.
okay, so yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, would you be willing to spend?
I'm gonna be with the administration as July, the noon hour thing.
Yeah.
Okay. You
I
can't.
have an ethics panel, we
Oh,
schedule.
yeah, we have an ethics panel
Yeah.
too, I forgot.
Yeah.
Who's chairing that?
It's me.
Got it. Okay. So this week, I don't see us with an extra hour. Are people willing to meet Monday afternoon?
No, I'm not.
Monday
I've
night?
got
The third?
a variety.
Yeah.
commitments.
Yeah, that's,
No, not the third. It's the,
or whatever,
the
the
third.
town meeting week?
no, we're the week following.
We following in Boston that day for a conference, so.
Okay.
Our meeting soon.
Okay. So what I'm asking for is Monday afternoon, the 10th. You're not available. You're not
I
available.
can,
Conference, or the car, all of them.
I'm available too.
Late next week on Zoom.
I mean, I blocked it off for the kids because their nanny is on vacation, so I can be half.
You could be
and
remote.
emotionally available, yeah. I mean,
Possibly remote.
or you can help me watch the kids and if we come to person.
Could we all be remote? Is there any rule against that?
No, we could all be remote. We could all be remote.
That'd make it a lot easier for me.
Mhm.
And because you're away, right?
No, I'm around next week.
Wait, are you?
The 10th.
We're not talking
The
about.
10th, I'm gonna either be in a car or in a conference, or it's for Nebi, which is a senatorial appointment, so I just.
Oh, great. So that afternoon, you might be available by remotely.
In the car, driving.
Okay.
Back from
That
Boston.
seems fine.
So should we tentatively look at that and we'll confirm it up by the end of, Randy, you looking at your schedule?
I'm looking, I don't see anything here, but I thought I had something that today.
I think if we're tentatively confirming, we need to do it today.
I'll do
Get
it
it on
as
our
soon as
calendar.
people can get their schedules.
Evening meeting, the 10th, but not the beginning.
Okay, so if we went sort of like 1 to 4 or 1:30 to 4:30, something like that.
I'm as interested in,
I just need to find anyway, if we could think about that and let me make a decision tomorrow, that would be great. So sometime the afternoon of the 10th,
okay.
sort of like 1 to 4.
And our goal, the 10th, is to have every piece of our housing bill drafted and up for discussion.
It is almost all drafted. I think we're waiting on pieces on the immigrant housing piece from you, from I understood from Pam, and we're waiting on.
What,
I mean, I spoke to Cam last night, and I think we were waiting for
yeah.
the by right manufacturers home. I have to find out from Ellen if we have that. And we have. I think we are. I think, do we have the language on the Wake Robin fix?
It exists. I mean, I will talk.
Can you
to
connect
him.
with Pam about
Yeah, that's Kirby, but yeah.
Kirby?
What I'm underlying that question for me is, I think by Monday, the 10th, we need to have our direction on the TIF proposal.
Right, we're gonna begin, we will have that. John has that drafted, and I think we begin that on Friday morning.
Do you know right now which version is drafted?
What version is drafted now is the Let's Build Homes, a draft that works off of that. And that is what is being drafted and that's what's drafted at the moment.
When was that decision made to go with that version?
That decision is the most, that is a decision that Thomas.
Is this what we received in an email from Heidi yesterday afternoon?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I don't know when that decision was made. I just want to make sure we were talking about.
No, the decision is that it's the most ready. It's the only one that's ready. That's the only one that's really ready. And so, given our time frame, I thought that was worth and
And that one's called HIT.
well, I don't know why it's called HIT, but yes, at the moment it's called HIT.
We're walking through it on Friday, right?
But I'm worried if we're only walking through one.
We don't, that is John, we're gonna have that conversation with John.
Okay.
So we're gonna look at, and you saw Frank Coffey's,
Yeah.
of all three, that I think that needs an update.
Mhm.
But I think John is gonna speak to that, and I think we'll answer our questions on that.
Okay.
So, and I think we're gonna do as much as we can do, quite frankly. That this is our time frame. We have not given a lot of time on this. We have pulled together as quickly as we can. We've gotten the drafting as quickly as we've been able to get it. So we're all trying to row as hard as we can row in the same direction, I hope.
I
And
just
we
think
may
it's
not
good-
Get it all
yeah.
done, but then we have after crossover
Yeah.
to build on a bill. We're getting
Sure,
a housing
sure.
bill from the House.
Yeah.
We can always add to what we get sent.
Yeah, I think crossover is a pretty artificial measure this session in particular. I hope I just try to communicate that on the record sometimes when people do get nervous,
Don't get nervous.
yeah,
Don't get
the
nervous.
people, like,
We are rowing as fast as we
Yeah.
can, and we have plenty of time after crossover to work on housing.
thank you.
Is that clear? I think that's clear.
Given the criticality of it, the likelihood of being able to plan ahead for an exception to crossover rule, but
Mhm.
is also.
Yeah, I'm not trying to build a false sense of urgency. I'm trying to
So
restore.
I have a sense.
Fast.
Mhm.
So I have a sense of urgency around the data privacy bill, which we will get. So we're making the motion today to send it to technology and institutions. They're going to do their work. They are then committing it to our committee. I have some sense of urgency about that. And I believe Senate Rules is going to be supportive of the fact that we may be a little delayed. I'm going to ask us probably to focus the week after crossover, pretty much focus exclusively on getting the data privacy bill out. And yeah, because we're going to get it and pretend to have the Senate Rules support us in getting it over for crossover. We're going to need that week after March 14th, the following.
The week after crossover.
Because
Okay.
they're going to work on it. Well,
I'm
and that's what
sorry.
Senate Rules.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you've asked about the game plan. That's what I'm hoping that's the game plan. And so that we can get that work, but we have to be working on that pretty immediately after the 14th.
I thought you were saying economic development and workforce.
That's after, workforce is after crossover, after we get whatever we're getting from the House.
So it's, okay.
I don't think that's, I said data privacy, because data privacy is going to that committee. Then they're going to send it to us. They're committing it to us. And I would like, if we can, to get that bill out to be considered for crossover by Senate Rules. And to do that, we're going to have to do it pretty quickly.
Do you understand what we're doing vis-a-vis privacy? Are we doing a single bill with PIF code in it, or are we doing those separate?
PIF code has been done by
That's what I thought.
institutions, so that will be on the floor as soon as they pass it out.
Single bill.
Yeah,
You know,
That's not obviously coming back to us. That's correct.
not at the moment.
And then the data privacy bill that should be introduced today or tomorrow that I hope we'll have time to consider is based on the Connecticut model.
Right.
I just want to say in the presence of people who are new, there's nothing quick about the data privacy bill.
Mm.
It took a significant amount of our time, more than I would have liked last biennium. And I'm just going to say, as a member of the committee, my sense of urgency is on housing infrastructure and economic development.
And
I
I
agree.
agree with that.
And I hope others can speak there. Can we listen to other members of the committee talk about where their sense of urgency is?
It's shared, and I do think data privacy is important, but I don't want to have a fight. I'd love to get something that,
Yeah,
consensus,
I agree.
people all agree is a starting point, and then it can be revisited later on.
But that data privacy is also something that will require witnesses. There will be people who want to testify.
Absolutely.
Opposition from the business community on a number of things that were in the PAC bill. So
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is a sense from everyone of, I want to do housing and infrastructure until they're done. And I would caution personally against setting a deadline for data privacy before we do a lot of other economic development work.
That's fair, but I guess what I'm responding to is the need to also get it to the other body.
I don't think it's a this year bill.
Is the House going to send us a data privacy bill that will land here? They're not getting it done. Okay. So maybe it's next year. But
David, do you have any comment?
I'm listening. I agree that housing and infrastructure is the goal, and I think that with a limited time, we need to make sure we take the proper testimony, discuss it at the expense of other potential bills that so.
and the other issue about data privacy is if we're doing something that would initiate some house, it's going to deal with it anyway.
Right.
It's not going to deal with
We
it
sent the
anyway.
kids
The
code.
urgency just isn't there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's why we're devoting our time to getting the bills out that we're talking about. So we will get that after whenever we get it. So that is what we know at the moment, and that is what we're working on.
So it sounds like people should really bring their A game for our infrastructure conversation on Friday in
Absolutely.
terms of the direction everyone thinks we should go and why and which communities it helps. I think.
I'm really just a B game kind of guy, though.
Actually, I have experienced that.
Level up, please.
So absolutely, I would urge, and so Heidi, you sent us all John Gray's language.
I don't know if I got this.
Okay, I'm not sure we did, so we will do that and, but I think,
I did just send you something that didn't come from John Gray that is on that HIT or his language. Is that what you're talking about? Actually,
John has language, so I'll check with
I
John.
don't have John.
I see it as very valuable to be able to say Friday before town meeting, we are working to set our direction on infrastructure and we're coming right back to set that direction on the 10th.
Absolutely.
I think that's what Vermonters want.
I think that's what I said.
Economic Development Committee.
I think that's what I
I
said.
just want to tie it up with a bow.
You can tie it with the bow. That's great. So I think we're in good shape and thank you very much for doing a lot of stuff this morning. This was good. And thank you.